Hello class, this is Mr. Diaz. Today we're going to go ahead and cover the next section, section 4.2. We're going to go ahead and cover the negative exponent rule. As I told you before that we cannot have negative exponents, and I'm going to try to keep the videos short, under 5 minutes, due to YouTube limitations there. So on some of them you're going to have to rewind and take a look back at some of these problems. But basically, if you have a negative exponent, you don't want a negative exponent, so you're going to have to put it as a fractional, as 1 over that base raised to the positive exponent. That's how you get rid of that negative exponent. So if we take a look at number 1a from your worksheet that I gave you, x raised to the negative third is rewritten as 1 over x to the third. And that would be your answer right there. So there's no need to do anything else besides that. So we're going to go ahead and keep it that way. Our next problem, notice that there is no parentheses around the 2 and the x. So that negative third only means that it's being raised to the x, not the 2. So the 2 by itself, we're going to go ahead and keep it. And just like we did right here on the previous one, x raised to the negative third, we apply the negative exponent rule. So this will be essentially the same thing, 1 over x over 3. Now notice, you're still multiplying these two things. So that 2, since this is a fraction, you need to go ahead and change it into a fraction. So we're going to have to put a 1 under there and simply multiply them. So 2 times 1 is 2. And 1 times x to the third is just x to the third. So that would be your answer for that one. For the next part, you may not necessarily want to use the negative exponent rule. You may use your quotient rule, which remember is if you have the same base, we subtract the exponents. So preferably this will not be used right away. You may have to use it at the end, but in this case, it is optional to go ahead and use the quotient rule. So we keep the same letter, A, and we're going to subtract from top to bottom. Now notice that there's going to be some sign change here, so this will be negative 2 minus negative 7. So we're not necessarily going to use the negative exponent rule here. If you take a look here, the double negatives, if you remember from your signs, is going to become positive. So this becomes a raised to the negative second plus 7. And once again, just like your rule states, you subtract, keep the sign of the larger one. In this case, negative 2 plus 7 will give you positive 5. So there is no need to use the negative exponent rule on here. We're going to use the quotient rule. And once again, if you want to refer back to it, it's number 6 right here on this list right here. Your quotient rule. You're subtracting it. So be aware that sometimes you're not going to use the negative exponent rule right away. Sometimes you're going to have to wait. Letter D here, it's a little bit different. We don't necessarily want to use the negative exponent rule right there. So if you take a look right there, we want to kind of separate it from here. But just a quick thing about these, whenever you have it in fractional form like you have them right there, just simply move them to the upstairs to make them positive, and that'll be your answers. So if something upstairs will be negative, you move it downstairs. Something downstairs is negative, you move it upstairs to make it positive. So, and that'll be a shortcut that we will discuss later on why it does that. But for right now, for the time frame that we have here, we're just going to go ahead and put it right there. So this will be 2y to the second over 3. So that would be your answer. What if we have something like this, where we have two negative exponents? Yes, you could use the negative exponent rule right here, but if you remember back in your exponent rule right here, your product rule, Your product rule states that if you have the same base and you're multiplying them, you add the exponents. So in this particular case, we're not going to use the negative exponent rule right away because we're going to go ahead and take care of this first. We're going to use the product rule here since both of them are the same, so this will be negative 3 plus negative 5. In other words, we're going to wait to use the negative exponent rule. So if we take a look at this, this will be now x raised to the negative 8th. Now in that case, we could go ahead and already use the negative exponent rule right there, since we added those exponents. So this will be 1 over x to the 8th. And that would be your answer. All right, the last one. Once again, you're going to have to refer back to your exponent rules right here. So number 5 is the one that we're going to apply here. So basically, if you have different bases, you're going to distribute the exponent. But at the same time, you're going to use number 4. If you have another exponent raised to another exponent, you multiply the exponents. So in this particular case, we're going to go ahead and distribute the exponent to the negative 2, to the a, and to the b. Notice that 2 is being raised to the first power, and the same thing with the b. So when we distribute that exponent, we're going to multiply the exponents. Keep in mind that you have a negative 2, so you have to encapsulate it in parentheses. So 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. A raised to the negative 4 raised to the negative 3rd, you multiply them. So this will be a to the 12. And it's positive. Watch out for the sign change here. And the same thing with the b. 1 times negative 3, that'll be negative 3. From this point on, you're going to go ahead and use the negative exponent rule for this one. So this one will be 1 over 2, negative 2, raised to the positive 3rd power. Notice that the base is still negative. The only thing that changes is the exponent. Now we're going to multiply it times a to the 12. Now since this thing is going to be a fraction, we got to change that into a fraction. So we go ahead and put a 1 on there. And once again, we apply the negative exponent rule right there. So this will be 1 over b raised to the 3rd. So we're going to simplify this. This is going to be negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, which becomes negative 1/8, because we're going to end up with a negative 8. The negative could be here or it could be in the middle, it doesn't matter, times a to the 12 over 1 times 1 over b to the 3rd. And then we just multiply. So we multiply. This thing is going to end up being negative. So let me go ahead and write down the answer over here on the side since I'm running out of space. So this thing will be negative. And once again, 1 times a to the 12 times 1 is just a to the 12. And at the bottom, you're going to have 8 times 1, which is 8, times b to the 3rd, which is 8b to the 3rd. And remember, the whole thing is negative. It doesn't matter where you have the negative as long as you have it somewhere. So that would be your answer. A to the 12, 8b to the 3rd. Okay, so this concludes part 1.